to inner peace, better health, where healing isn't just a destination but a deeply personal journey. Today's guest is Jeremy George, entrepreneur, TEDx speaker, and full time adventurer of the soul. At a moment when life looked perfect on paper, Jeremy was silently drowning. But instead of giving in, he chose radical experiment 52 bucket list goals in 52 weeks. What followed was not just a thrilling adventure, it was a life saving transformation. So, tonight we explore how chasing joy can literally save your life. So, Jeremy, can you take us back to that moment in NYC? Everything looked great from the outside, but what was really going on inside?
Yeah, so, I was at a point in my life where I had hit many milestones that I thought were supposed to make me happy. As you mentioned, I was living in New York City at the time. I was in a beautiful apartment. I was at the peak of my career, making more money than I had ever made before, and I'd just gotten a promotion at work. Um, but hitting all these milestones didn't actually make me any happier, and it wasn't until I had reached that point where I realized that I was chasing all of these, sort of vanity metrics, but if they weren't going to bring me happiness, I started to question what would actually make me happy, and was it even possible for me to be happy at all, or would I just continue to chase, more and more goals? And so I actually struggled for a year with suicidal ideation because I started to question if it was even possible for me to ever be happy. And
Mhm.
so that's what kickstarted this journey where I decided to go try to do a bunch of things for my bucket list. But and I'm sure we'll get more into that. But yeah, so on the surface, although it looked like I had everything together, I was struggling.
So, what made you choose a bucket list as your path out instead of, therapy or medication alone?
So I actually did do a little bit of therapy. And I think for me, to be very clear, when I was really in the deepest struggles, where, and when I say deepest struggles, I mean I remember, waking up in the morning and the first thing that I thought of was suicide. I would be on my way to work, riding the subway, and I would suddenly feel so suffocated that I just had to get off the subway, 20 stops before I was actually supposed to get off. And I would just walk to work because I was having a panic attack and it would seemingly come out of nowhere. I remember I would be, out with my friends having a great time together, but then I would come home and suddenly I would just be, standing in the shower maybe. And suddenly I would be overcome with this dread, sort of this sense of impending doom. And um, what I did in those moments to get out of it or during that period was I meditated every single day. I journaled every single day. I did my best to just write down my thoughts, yeah, as scary as they were, as uncomfortable as they were. I wrote them. I put them on paper, and I think that by just forcing myself to go through those exercises, it actually helped me remove myself from my thoughts, and it allowed me to observe my thoughts more objectively, to realize that even though I don't want to be here anymore, I do have reasons to still be here, and I can fight through it.
Hmm. That choice to turn away toward life instead of away from it, it's so profound. You give yourself a reason to keep showing up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think in those moments it's really, really challenging. And I don't want to sugarcoat that. One thing that I found to be extremely helpful for me personally is I would join soccer games, pick up soccer games. So I'm a soccer player myself, and those were the only moments that I found where I wasn't thinking about suicide, or I wasn't just questioning the point of life. And I think it's because there's this, this sort of very like immediate thing in front of you that you need to be paying attention to. The ball is being passed to you. You need to look at the other players around you. And so engaging in physical exercise that also incorporated other people was really powerful. And then, even after those games, I would go grab a beer or something with my teammates. And sort of immediately, I would fall back into this mindset of thinking about life and questioning it and why do I even want to be here? But I realized, you know what, for those, 30 to an hour where I was just playing soccer. I wasn't thinking about life. And that gave me conviction to know that it is possible. It is possible to rewire my brain so that I'm not going to be contemplating suicide.
Mm-hmm. So, what was the very first bucket list item you checked off, and how did it feel to take that leap, both literally and emotionally?
So when I did the, I guess to fast forward and give a little bit of context, um, in 2020, of course, COVID hit and affected the entire world, and we were all forced to reconcile with the fragility of life. And that actually helped kickstart for me this realization that, even though I had been sitting here very comfortable, yet I was questioning life. And then to suddenly be forced to realize that life can be taken away from you at any moment, I decided that I would just take control of my life and I would actually go after the things that I've always wanted to do. And so I had a bucket list that had over 200 goals on it. This is something that I started when I was 19 years old. So it'd been over a decade. And so I reread that list and I decided I would choose 52 things from that list to try to do in 52 weeks because that's 1 year. And I dedicated the next year to just deliberately trying to do a bunch of things from my bucket list. The first thing that I did was just simply write down the list. And so I crossed that off. That was easy. But then, of course, I needed to do a couple of other things as well. So I paid for a stranger's meal. That was something I had always wanted to do. I did a digital detox. So I just got rid of my phone, my computer. I didn't do anything for 72 hours. That was something I had always wanted to try. And so I started with smaller, simpler things on my bucket list, just experiences that I'd always wanted to try that I never did. And then eventually that grew into much bigger things like biking down the California coast, which is a 650-mile bike ride. It took me 10 days. Um, but, everything on my bucket list, whether it was big or small, was meaningful to me.
Mm-hmm. So, did you feel the fear before some of the
Yeah, yeah, of course. There's always fear, especially by nature. The definition of a bucket list is anything that you want to do before you die. And so typically, what that means is anything that's on your bucket list is something that you've never done before, and that can be really terrifying. Um, but for me, I one of the rules that I set for myself was that I would celebrate failure. And what I mean by that is when I tried something and I wasn't able to achieve it, or if I reached out to someone and I was rejected or turned down in some way, I would celebrate those moments and I would reward myself and I would give myself a pat on the back. And what ends up happening when you celebrate failure and rejection is that you become more addicted to the process than the actual
Mhm.
end result. You start to focus on just doing the thing, even if you don't succeed, because the whole point is to just try. And I think that was extremely rewarding. Was reframing my perspective on what does it mean to succeed or fail.
That's really thought provoking. It's really wild, Jeremy, how fear and freedom often hold hands, and that's where real growth happens, right?
Exactly.
Now, how did this journey begin to shift your definition of success and happiness?
So for me, personally, I think everyone needs to go through their own journey. But prior to this experience, I measured my success based on typical society standards, right? I was evaluating myself based on my career, my wealth, my overall status in society. And that's what I strived for. Now I really think about success and the overall richness of my life solely based on the experiences that I'm able to share with other people. And whether those experiences are good or bad doesn't matter to me as much as if I have just tried and experienced new things. At the end of the day, we all only have one life on this planet. And I
Mhm.
think a really rich life is one in which you've done a bunch of different things or you've at least tried so that you got to experience as much as life has to offer.
Absolutely. So, can you share some vanity metrics you used to chase that now you completely reject?
Yeah, I mean, the amount of money in my bank account, the title that I have at my job, um, those were the types of things that I was heavily focused on before. I do think, I should caveat this with, I think, you do need a certain level of income to be able to just sustain a happy life. And so I don't want to be insensitive to folks that are truly struggling and where money is the number one priority. And, if that's the case, then that should be your goal, because that money will enable you to have a more fulfilling life. But at least for me in my situation, I had already hit that threshold many years prior. And so I was just continuing to chase money for no really real reason other than vanity, as I've mentioned before, status, wealth, things like that.
That narrative is game changing. We all get sold someone else's dream, but your story shows us how vital it is to chase our own.
Yeah, that's what I think. And I think that everyone should, um, as difficult as it is, try to go on your own journey to really determine and think deeply about what does success mean to you, because it will be different for everybody. But once you have that clarity, I think it makes everything else a lot easier.
Exactly, that completely makes sense. So, were there any goals that triggered unexpected healing or deep emotions that you didn't see coming?
Wow, that's a great question. So I had a wide variety of goals that I achieved that year. Some of them were about like pushing my limits. So I went cliff jumping in Hawaii, to get over a fear of heights. I learned how to play guitar, and then I performed in front of a crowd, something I'd never done before, and that was really pushing the edge of my comfort zone to help me, overcome this sort of fear of being exposed in front of other people. I also meditated every day for 90 days, which helped me on a very spiritual level. But I think the one that was probably most sort of spiritually healing for me was number 52. The last thing on my bucket list for that year was to help someone else complete something on their bucket list. Um, and so I ended up going skydiving with a friend of mine from university. His name is Robert, and that was something that he had always wanted to do. And we went, we got together. We actually recruited another friend to join us. We went skydiving, and obviously that's a very typical bucket list item. And we jumped from 1,300 feet or 13,000 feet in the air. It was thrilling. It was exhilarating. There was all kinds of fear and emotion wrapped up into it, and it was an incredible experience. What
Mm.
really surprised me was after that experience, the three of us, we got together and we were just having a chat, and I found out that Robert actually wrote letters to everyone in his family and his partner before he went skydiving. And he wrote those letters just in case, it didn't go well, just in case somehow his parachute didn't deploy and he ended up dying from that skydive experience. And I thought, wow, this guy, he did this thing, even though he thought that there was a possibility he might die. He still decided to do it anyway. And for me, it all came down to the human connection. And I think that's really what I took away from this year was, although I was trying to do 52 things on my bucket list to try to find my sense of happiness, the answer was actually it's all about the people. The people that you engage with when you're pursuing exciting experiences or experiences that are meaningful to you, that's what makes life so rewarding.
That sounds adventurous as well as remarkable, Jeremy. So,
Yeah, thank you.
mhm. How did you hold space for those emotions while still moving forward?
Mm. Um, that's a great question. I
Mhm.
think that when you are pursuing things that are when you're pursuing things that are so meaningful to you, um, you naturally create a space of warmth and awareness, because you know that this thing matters on a higher level. And when you are doing things and you're going through your day to day where you don't feel like you're actually pursuing your purpose, you're not doing things that are important to you, but you're doing things because you have to. We have a tendency to reject and bury those emotions because they know they're going to prevent us from actually just doing the thing that we think we have to do. But when you're pursuing a bucket list, there's no rules, right? The bucket list is just whatever you want to do before you die. And I think a true bucket list is the most authentic reflection of who we are and who we want to become. And so it becomes much more natural and easy to hold that space for all of your emotions because everything that you're doing is all in line and aligned with your most authentic self.
Hmm? That's the magic, real transformation sneaks upon us when we are just trying to feel alive again, right?
I think that's exactly it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now that the 52 weeks are over, how do you stay connected to purpose and mental wellness day to day?
Yeah, well, so I mean, on a very tactical level, I continue my practice of daily meditation. I continue a daily gratitude journal. Those are two things that are really important to me, and the consistency of it is really what's so valuable. Um, Outside of that, the biggest takeaway is that I've now started a company that is entirely intended to help people take the leap on their bucket list dreams. The company is called BucketMatch. It's an online platform, and users, you go in, you sign up, you write down whatever's on your bucket list, and then our job is to try to go and match you with other members who might be able to help you achieve that goal in some way, whether it's a buddy, someone who also has that same goal as you, and maybe you guys can help each other do it, or a mentor, someone who's already done the thing that you're trying to do, and they can help show you the ropes and coach you through the process.
Hmm. So, what would you like to say to someone listening right now who feels like numb, stuck, or ready to give up?
For anyone that's in that dark place, ready to give up, I think the first thing I would want to say is you're not alone. Um, and you would be surprised by the people in your life that maybe are going through the same thoughts and that you wouldn't even realize. Um, so the first thing is to recognize, I think, that you're not alone. The second thing I would say is, get help to whatever extent you're comfortable, whether it's meeting with a therapist, there's anonymous hotlines you can call, but get help and seek help from someone else. And then lastly, I'll share what worked for me. And I mentioned this before. This doesn't necessarily work for everybody, but it's just what worked for me. And if you're looking for a solution, I think it's worth giving it a shot. The first thing I would do is I just journaled a lot, and I would force myself. I went through this exercise where I would write for 3 minutes straight, and I wouldn't allow myself to pick up the pen from the paper. And I think it's really important that you write specifically with your hand. And what that allowed me to do was it allowed me to just let all of the craziness and all the chaos that was happening in my mind get put out onto paper. And by doing so, you remove yourself from your thoughts a bit. You realize that you're able to objectively observe your thoughts without necessarily internalizing or identifying with your thoughts. And that's really critical, especially when your thoughts are dangerous, are negative, are potentially about self harm. uh, you're able to view them as if someone else was looking at you. And I think then you're able to look at them more rationally and say, okay, well, this doesn't actually make sense. I do have a way out of this. I can work on. The last thing that helped me, as I mentioned before, was engaging in physical exercise with other people. This, whether it's soccer or tennis or ping pong, volleyball, any sport, any physical activity that engages other people and forces you to use your hand-eye coordination, forces you to use your reflexes, that's incredibly valuable. I do know that people will go running or swimming or cycling, and while that's valuable for someone who's in a really dark place mentally, those types of exercises don't allow your brain to escape from its negative thought cycle. And so that's why I really emphasize the social aspect.
That message is a lifeline, Sometimes the next best thing isn't huge, it's just one tiny step back toward yourself, right?
Yeah, I think you nailed it.
Absolutely. So, was there one specific bucket list experience that had the most profound impact on you?
I think the one that had the most profound impact for me was biking down the California coast from San Francisco to San Diego. And there are a couple of reasons for this, but the biggest one is that it involved the most people. And so this was a 10-day trip. It was 650 miles, And all along that route, I had different friends that would help me out in some way. Some friends who joined for small legs of the trip. I had friends that would just allow me to stay at their, crash at their house on a couch for a night as I was going down, and it really helped. It helped me it regalvanized this notion that people want to be helpful, and that I have great people in my community. And finishing the entire 650-mile bike ride was incredibly rewarding, of course, physically. But to me, the thing that I take away from it the most was that you can never do it alone, and that you should always seek help in relationships with other people. As I mentioned before, I think that's truly what makes life fulfilling.
That powerful one, Jeremy. It's incredible that how doing something brave even once can shift an entire perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that when you do things that are really hard and that push you a little bit outside of your comfort zone, that those are the experiences, those are the moments that really unveil that beauty to you.
Absolutely. Jeremy George, you just reminded us that purpose doesn't always come in a lightning role. It can come in a list of dreams, risks, and bold decisions to keep living. And for all our listeners, if you're feeling stuck or swallowed by the silence, maybe it's time to write your own list. Chase something that scares you, thrills you, and awakens you. Your peace, your joy, and your healing might just be waiting on the other side of that leap. Until next time, breathe deep, live wide, and keep choosing.